Hi guys, welcome back to Martin's Daughter. On today's episode, I have Lisa Fifield. Lisa was a ballet dancer under the CCP in China, and she feels really passionate about what she saw there and what we're seeing here and what we can do to honor the people who did experience a loss of freedom. We discussed some of the reasons on why people might or might not stand up for it. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
So Lisa, I am so glad to have you on. Thank you for coming. I am really excited. I was able to speak with Lily Ting Williams a while ago and to hear kind of what it was like to grow up under Mao. But I know that you have your own experiences, and I think it's so important that we have this conversation because it seems like it's intentionally hidden.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that this conversation about communism, Maoism, and these ideologies, these Marxist ideologies, they're often hidden there. But I think that that's probably like 2% who are purposefully doing that. And the rest of us are just kind of going along and not realizing and not knowing what we don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So you lived in China.
Yeah, I did. Would you like me to tell you about it?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, well, in 1999, I got an offer to dance with the Guangzhou Ballet. That's in Guangzhou, China, which is in the south near the Hong Kong border. And I had the opportunity to dance with the company there. I was the first American to have that opportunity to receive a contract with the Chinese ballet company. So at that time, I really didn't want to go to China. I didn't know much about China. I loved sweet and sour chicken, but I remember being in 5th grade at my elementary school in a very small town where I grew up in Idaho, watching just a movie about the Chinese language. And I watched it and I just was so blown away because I thought, I am so glad that I never have to learn that language because I'm not smart enough to do Chinese. So I went to China and I was armed with one sentence, 我不知道, which means I don't know. And that was all I knew because a friend of mine at church said, you're going to China? You need to know this sentence. And so he wrote it down in Chinese for me. And he said, if anybody asks you anything, this is what you say. And that is exactly what I did is I just went there and I had that sentence and I practiced over and over. And then, I had a lot of experiences where I was completely embarrassed when people, a group from Japan asked me, in Chinese, like, where are you from? And I just said, well, Buzhidao. And then they said, in English, you mean you don't know where you're from? And I said, oh, I do. I'm from America, And so anyway, it did help me for a little while, but then I discovered I really needed to learn Mandarin. That's the key to really understanding the Chinese people, their culture, their heritage, their history, is to learn this very challenging language. So I was there for a year and a half. I danced in many of the ballets there. One experience that I have is dancing the Yellow River Ballet. Now, I have to say it's really interesting. For the first time in my life, I experienced discrimination. And that was something that I had never really experienced before. And so it wasn't based on my ability, it was based on the fact that I was not Chinese. And so when I discovered that I was left off the cast list, I decided that I would attend every rehearsal and I would learn every part.
Wow.
And the ballet company even gave me keys because I asked, I want to practice in the evenings and I want to get better. And so in the evenings when even the Chinese, they even rest, you wouldn't think so because they are such hard workers. I would work till late at night, just practicing over and over again, all the steps and my technique and improving myself and my strength. And then the night before opening night of the Yellow River Ballet, the lead dancer, one of the lead dancers, not the lead dancer, one of the demi soloists, she twisted her ankle and there was no understudy. And they had to have the American step in and do the dance and do the part. And at that time, I understood, very little of anything that was going on around me. I'd been in China for about that point, it was about 10 months at that point. And so opening night, this beautiful music, the classical song of the Yellow River, which represents Chinese civilization, where the Chinese believe that their civilization began, was in the Yellow River Valley. They call themselves the Yellow Race, and they come from the yellow earth, is how they say it. And so I'm there dancing along the final scene, this great crashing music, and the bright red lights come on the stage, and the communist flag comes down as a backdrop, and people rise to their feet and start shouting because they are applauding communism. And I was a part of that experience, not realizing that I thought in my heart, I'm not for this, right? But I felt that God knew that. But I just felt, I'm for freedom, and that's who I am. And even though I was doing the steps, I knew who I was and I knew what I would stand for. And so, yes, I was able to save the day with the Chinese ballet company. But anyway, that did teach a lot of the Chinese people a lesson, I guess. When we had our meeting the next day, they just said, you should be like Mei Qingsha, how she did this and she did that. But anyway, that is the American way, isn't it? That's the American way. We work hard to get, what we want. And it does pay off.
Right,
Yeah.
merit. It should always be merit focused.
Yes.
So, and I'm glad, I mean, I'm not glad that you experienced discrimination because that sucks. I mean, it's just, it's hard to be reduced to the color of your skin. But I'm glad you experienced it. And, when you experience something, then nobody can take it away from you.
You're absolutely right. I have to just say that, I felt that so much because they would call me the white devil, because white is now it's honored, but they have sayings about, the white devils. You have to understand the history of China with the Opium Wars. The British purposefully gave the Chinese opium, and that was a very, I would say, a very dark past that we have on what Great Britain did in order to start trade with the Chinese. But I think that there's still that feeling of not being able to trust, the white person. And I also have to say, I just want to tell you, I know you've experienced it so much more. I mean, we're talking about a very narrow time of my life, but I agree. If you can experience that, you can relate to people, and there is an understanding and there's a kinship that you share.
You
Hmm.
know, but Lisa, I really haven't. Like, I haven't experienced it as much as people want to project. People pretend that racism is an everyday experience, that in everywhere I go, this is the situation. Yes, the truth is that in every situation, people recognize that I'm not white, but in most situations, it doesn't matter. So, and I hope that when you were in China, you found people that it didn't matter to at some point. Um,
Yeah, I think it's when people get to know you, right?
exactly. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
that's for everything, right? They forget the outward and they
well,
see the inward. They see the
some
person.
people, some
Yeah.
people do, but there are certain people who it is so embedded that that's the first and foremost thing that they have to think about. Um, And it's so funny to me because that is not usually the conservative person who has that mindset.
Wow.
It's an interesting thing because it's almost always that intellectual who is like, no, 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 you don't understand. You are so oppressed. And it's sad. But
Yes.
but really we're having this conversation to talk about, like, I don't understand why they would stand. I guess I know enough in my little world, but my little world of understanding communism is understanding the people who escaped it. So, but then why would they feel they needed to escape it if it's so wonderful?
That's a really probing question. This is a book. It's called The Little Red Book, and I bought this in China. It's actually supposedly signed by Chairman Mao himself. Um, I I bought it at an antique store. You know, the challenge is in China, they say it's real, but you don't know if it's real or not. But I have this, and this was in the when China became communist in 1949, when Mao took over. They had this red book of Mao's quotations, and they were all required to, shout the slogans and raise that red book. You were the one that was, targeted, because if you were just kind of looking around like, I don't think so, you were done for, right? So there's this outward, I'm pro, right? I have to be. I'm worried about my life, my living, not even that, but my family. What will happen to my family? It's ingrained in them in society because of all of the difficulties, all of the things that the Chinese people went through during this time period. And I get emotional when I think about it because after studying, it's really horrible.
I'm emotional too because so much of it feels like it's on our doorstep. I mean, you sit there going, you have to say, and I'm watching stuff of Title IX go through, and you're just going, you're gonna make us do the same thing. And especially, oh my gosh, I don't cry, especially our children, you
Yeah,
know. It really does seem like we are on. I just I know that where my experience with this comes from is being in Washington State during the last election season and watching these people who normally, quite frankly, would not have welcomed me into their circle because it is it is an absolute lie that only white people can be racist and Black people are not generally invited into Asian circles. But in this one, people realized that we all needed to be a big tent and we all needed to stand for America and the promise of America, whether or not we're completely there or not. They were going, where do we go from here? People who've never been interested in politics ever were saying, we have to get involved because we see what happened in our, we see the exact same indoctrination. So,
right,
yeah.
right. These are patterns. And if you know history, if you haven't lived through it, but you know history, if you've read books, then you can educate yourself so that when these things start happening, you will see the signs. But if you haven't read the books and you're not aware, you're more likely to be tricked, right? So when you live through it, it's just the lights are on, the sound is blaring, and the warning is coming. But if you're not, sometimes people are so educated that they think, we're so above this.
We'll
That's
do it
not
better.
happening here,
We'll do it
right?
better
So
next
it's in your heart. Like if you're willing to have eyes that see and ears that hear, then, if you're constantly asking God, help me to know, what I need to be concerned about, are these people crazy or should I listen? Should I consider this? And if you get that feeling that maybe you should listen instead of turn it off because it's offending you, maybe that's telling you something. I have a bunch of books that I wanted to show to people that are watching,
Yeah.
uh-huh, that I can recommend if people want to educate themselves. Never fear, there's some really great resources that are out there for you. Here's one right here. This is one you can read with your children. It's called The Red Scarf Girl by Jiang Li. I'm meeting the author on Friday. And so I read this with my students and they loved it. The next one, this is a fantastic book. This is called Mao the Unknown Story. This book is written for us in America where we can actually have this book. And you could get in trouble for having a book like this in China. Believe me, we have that ability to educate ourselves and to learn this.
What
This
does
is
it mean?
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. What does it mean to get in trouble in China?
Okay, so let me give you an example. When I was in China, there was a group called the Falun Dafa, or you've probably heard of those practicing Qigong,
Mhm.
which is it's an exercise of meditation, right?
Right.
And they just go to the parks and they just put their hands here for like 7 minutes and their arms here, up here, and they just do these very meditative poses. Well, when I was there and we had a communist representative come from the government and they wanted to tell us about how dangerous these people were, we were warned that if we were to see them practice any of these things, that that those people would go to jail, and that's where they belonged. Well, me and my thinking I still have my First Amendment right to say what I think, I just said, I think that they should be allowed to practice the Qigong. I don't understand why this is such a threat. And I was warned at that point that if I continued to share my opinion, that I would join them in jail.
For saying your
Okay, for just saying that. Okay, so that shut me up right away. Who wants to go to a jail in China?
right.
Yeah, so the fear and the threats that
So
you
are people
receive.
just living in fear? I mean, is that a common
I
what
think
people live
that
in?
a lot of people, well, they've been trained, right? It's a brainwashing, you know, and you have to drink the Kool-Aid and you have to just go along with it. You have to do that in order to survive. If your eyes are open and you're really saying, what's up with all these cameras everywhere? Like, why does my phone like give me a social rating now? What's that about? I now get a social rating for the places that I visit and the people that I'm interacting with. That affects my ability to purchase anything. People don't want to associate with someone who has a low social score. They're all ways that you are controlled. So you either get in line or what else are you going to do? You're not going to be able to buy anything. You're not going to be able to go anywhere. What's your hope for the future? Well, if we're not careful, it's coming here because everything I see that's going on in China eventually makes it here. Coronavirus. Back in February, I was asking my Chinese friend who was from the area of Wuhan where the laboratory is. She was from there. Her family was in lockdown, couldn't leave their home. Her brother was online with his studies. I asked her, do you think we should be nervous here? Do you think we need to be concerned? Oh no, China's got it all under control. A month later, it's happening here. So
Yeah.
we like to think, oh, we're so safe. God's going to protect us. We're going to be fine. Why should we be worried? We have the Constitution, you know? What good about the Constitution unless we fight for those freedoms?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We have people here who think the Constitution is nothing but a piece of paper that's outdated and needs to be destroyed. We
Is I would agree with them. If we do not enforce our laws,
right.
if we as a, the first three words of the preamble are what? We the
We the
people.
people.
Okay. If we the people, there is a responsibility we have with this document. George Washington is in a lot of these constitutions, he's handing you the pen. You sign your name. You pledge your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor to uphold this document. Why would you do that?
Right.
To uphold the principles of liberty. If you don't care, then go along. And you know what? We get to look forward to having the same stories that a lot of these people have had. Because if we think we're too good, yes, we've been blessed. Yes, we have so much, but really there's nothing expected of you. You read the Bible on Sunday, it doesn't change you, then of course, you're going to do nothing about it. We are literally on a precipice of change in our country. We are the ones that have to decide what we are going to allow to happen to our children, our children's children. This has been building up for years. And guess what? We're the stars of the show. This is what we get to do. We can say, why did you choose me to be here at this time? But we're here. So we better just, roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because so many people don't want to. So many people put their heads in the sand and are just like, oh, it could never come here. Or just, well, at least, all I'm going to do is work on my family, just protecting my little square. And it's like, you don't understand. There is no protecting your family if certain people gain control. If certain people I don't even understand like what their purpose is. Like what is this whole argument about equity? Because nobody who believes that stuff wants equity for the rest of us. So why in the world are we preaching equity and that we're all going to be have equal outcomes? I don't want the same equal outcomes that communist countries have. No, thank you. I like having a 5-bedroom house and a couple of bathrooms and like I like those things and I don't see them happening when I turn around and I look in our neighborhoods and I see apartment complexes that are being built that have 500 that have room for 500 people. You just go, what are they doing? Why are they doing this in like rural towns? Building complexes for 500 to 1,000 people.
Wow. Well, there's a lot. That's a loaded question right there. And so, equity itself, yes, I would just say that that in and of itself is just people not being educated and understanding what that actually means. It's a buzzword, equity. It sounds good, would feel good to have, everyone be the same, everyone get the same. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't
I
it
think the people
be
who think
fair?
I think the people who think this is a good idea have never been poor. That's what I think. I think that they're thinking, oh yes, we're all going to have smart cars and swimming pools and it's like, no, no, no. We're all going to have what the government tells us, which is, glasses out of the poor box and government cheese and only eating what they want us to eat.
Yes. Well, let's just say that that is communist right there. If you want to say, we all have plenty to eat, we all eat our fill. No, it means you're all poor. Okay, so we'll just, lower you all down. You're on the same level, all of you. Okay, another thing is, have you ever had school lunch? As a teacher, have you literally gone to school and seen what they feed our children? Like it looks like dog food, literally. I wouldn't even feed my dog that.
It's gross. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is disgusting. And, I can just tell you, it's really sad. Obviously, if you are starving to death, you would eat it. But, again, anything that I would say that is state owned is often not working very well, right? You
Recently spoke with a young woman who went and taught English as a second language there.
Mhm,
And she said it was so interesting because you absolutely were supposed to manhandle the kids. Like if they stepped out of line, the standards and the expectation that they had for those kids, even little kids. And she said, and she's only like she's 22 now.
mhm,
And she said that kindergartners marched before school.
mhm.
They would have to march. And I'm sitting there going, wow, our teenagers think that they are oppressed and are triggered. And we have wellness centers in our schools that have bean bags and, because they can't handle going to school for a short amount of time during the day. And I'm thinking, how would they survive if these countries have influence? If they take over America, which I'm inclined to believe that they have their hands in.
Yeah.
I think they're sitting back watching all of the crazy insanity, true insanity that's hitting America, going, eating popcorn and going, awesome, check, next.
Well, as far as the society, if we wanna talk about abuse that you can see, you might wanna talk about the individual and that the individual is oppressed and that this is a collective society, it's a collective environment. So when I think it's very similar to how I was dancing there in the company. In America, it's about the individual, every dancer is out there just giving it their all and just shining, right? But you get to China and it's don't do that. Your finger needs to be fixed. So you have to do it right here. Your head is there. Your eyes don't look up. You're not looking at the audience. You're looking straight ahead. You are like a soldier
In
and
everything you do.
you're not celebrated as yourself. You're it's the whole. And there is beauty in that unity. There is. I have to say when I see Ballet West dance, their core dancers, I'd say, "Oh, it's just so terrible," right? But there is a time and a place, right? There's a time and a place where we get in line. There is a time and a place where we have to do that in society because that produces order, you know? Now, in countless ways, China is definitely, I would say, a model in and of itself to the rest of the world of what you can accomplish in your society in a short amount of time. What is the expense of that? Well, those are things that we can talk about. Marching students, as a matter of, making them little soldiers. Yeah, well, you see that here. You see that in our classrooms with the Chinese teachers. You see, there have been teachers that, have told the students, you were doing this, so now you have to march around like a little soldier, and people just say, "Oh, that's not cute." No, that's communist right there. That is exactly what they would have, the kids do. They march around. But, I think those are small things. I think that those things are small. I think big things are when teachers are allowed to hit, physically harm a person. When I was dancing in the Guangzhou Ballet, I remember the one of the dancers in front of me. We were in Swan Lake rehearsal and her arm was just barely too high and she was hit on the face and she was bleeding. Her face had blood, literally drew blood. And, she kept it together, and afterwards, she was just crying. I didn't even know what to say. I was just dumbfounded. That just does not happen here. But if you have a society that is not accountable to its people, like China, hopefully America will make our leaders, our government accountable to us. So in China, you can basically do or say whatever you want. Isn't that terrifying? Isn't it terrifying that they have a government that can give whatever narrative they choose, that can say and do whatever they want? and you get hit on the face by someone running your company, and they do that to you, and what's your recourse? What are
Yeah.
your rights? Why is
Mhm.
this important? Why should we know the Constitution?
Yeah. I mean, nothing. Like your rights are literally nothing. You
Yeah,
are
you have no rights. Yeah.
so so what happens to these people in terms of you said that it's filled with skyscrapers and big beautiful buildings. Does that mean that the people in China are living comfortably? Does that mean that they are are they growing with the wealth, or is that reserved for just a few?
I think that's a great question. I think that it's like seeing a beautiful building on the outside is just so pretty, right? But inside it's decaying. It's a facade. Okay. How much is your freedom worth to you? How much would you pay for your freedom? I'm asking you this question.
Yeah.
What's the price? How much money?
I'm I'm an oddly uh fiercely independent person. My background is that when I was 8 years old, I ran away to the police station and put myself in foster care. I do not comply with um, things that I know are wrong, period. So for me, I guess I'd be in jail. I mean, honestly, I would be in jail, and I do expect that. Not because I'm going to go out and do anything violent, but because there are things that I will not do. I will not bend for what is wrong. And I'm raising my child to be the same way. And I'm so afraid that I can only have so many of these conversations in a week because there is a fear. And I think the biggest part for me, the biggest fear with the communists, especially like a global version of communism, is that they find religion problematic. So I've heard there are churches in China, but they have to be obedient to the state.
I'd love to have that conversation with you. This is a book. It's called The Heavenly Man, the true story about a Christian man living and growing up in during the Cultural Revolution. His name is Brother Yoon. This is about his life, his story. He was persecuted. He was put in jail. He was beat up. He lost everything on this earth as far as his earthly possessions and his treasures. He suffered so much for Christ, but he would not bend. And I ask you the question, what is it worth to put your church in a communist country? And what deals will you make in order to put that church there? When I attended church in China, I was followed. There were people, who knows who it was, would follow me in a car, knew I was going someplace on Sunday when I was allowed to go somewhere on Sunday because we didn't have work. As far as church is concerned, yes, Christians are persecuted in China. Those who follow the rules, you have to ask yourself, what negotiations have you made to allow your church to be there? What have you allowed? I can tell you that people in my church, we met, it felt underground in that there was not a building. It was in an apartment. I taught primary standing while the children sat on the bed of a person's house, right? I I know that if a person had a foreign passport, they could attend. If they were from China, they could not attend the church. Those were rules that the government, put in place. I couldn't tell people about my beliefs. I couldn't do that. It was not allowed, and I was not going to put myself in danger by doing that. I can tell you that when I was traveling. There was, let's see, it was between Fuzhou and Suzhou. It's up near Shanghai area. There was one of the lead dancers, and she asked me, you know, how do you pray? She said, I need to talk to you. We went into one of the train cars, just the two of us, and I just thought, well, I don't want to get in trouble, right? So I just told her, I just fold my arms and I bow my head. And you can just say, dear God, and then you thank him and you ask him for what you need. And then in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And she said, thank you. And, there's just little things like that. Again, First Amendment, our freedom of religion,
Right.
right? We
We're
have
losing it.
we have to defend it, right? We have to know it in order to defend it, right?
Right.
And so, Congress cannot make laws about our religion and how we practice it. Period.
Well, I think they are. I mean, with the new Title IX, they want compelled speech. And that goes against many people's religion. It also just goes against many people's just sense of common sense.
Hmm.
And for them to force that on us, you have to ask, how free are we in this country right now? That they can just blanket wipe across any bills that they want to and say that it's under the name of compassion or under the name of equity, especially, right?
Right.
Really, what they're doing is taking away everything. And
Right.
so people need to really, they need to figure it out. They need to figure out where they stand. Because if you go to church on Sunday and you pray and you say, "Oh, I believe in Christ and I am, sold out 100%." But you don't have the guts to say something is wrong here and you follow along, you are selling your soul. I really do think that. Now, these people, they don't even have a chance to sell their soul because it's been so many generations that they have had to follow this. And yet, listen to her. Listen to what she's saying, because she's saying that even then, and even at the risk of going to jail or worse, getting beaten, you know, or both, I don't know, but even at the risk of that, people are asking her in quiet, how do you pray? Because they're
Hmm.
desperate for hope. They are
They are.
desperate for hope.
Yeah. I mean, you have a government in China that they want to be the almighty, the all powerful. It seeks to feed itself. It seeks to protect itself. It is it is like this giant dark black hole that just keeps gathering, and it doesn't seek what's good for others. It's only about itself. And anyone that resists will also be, cut down, turned away, and it really is, you've got to know which hill you will die on at this point. You've got to say, if you're going to say, oh, that doesn't matter. I don't care. I, no, I don't have to have a Bible. I really don't. I don't need a gun. I don't need that. No, it's fine. I can teach my children at home, whatever's being taught at school. I can just tell them, what the right things are. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Well, if you just keep saying everything doesn't matter, then really it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not going to matter, and you're going to live in a world that doesn't matter.
Yeah. We're definitely, I think apathy is a huge part of the problem that we're dealing with now. And it's very easy to say that things don't matter when we have distractions like our cell phones, anything that can put us into another place where we don't have to think about the real things and we can just go shopping. I mean,
I love that you said that. I love that you said that because that is exactly what I've been thinking about. And that is this. During the Cultural Revolution, the Red Guards destroyed the cultural heritage of China. They destroyed it. They smashed it. The genealogy's destroyed. I have friends. They don't even know who their family is. They don't have the names. They feel like they're orphans here because they have no connection on this earth that they feel they have. but those things were destroyed. And, in this book, Life and Death in Shanghai, this woman, Zheng Nian, she relates an experience where she was held up in her home by these like teenagers. They have the ability to come in her house. They enter her home. She says under the Chinese constitution, I have a right to my property. What right do you have to enter my home? They said it doesn't matter what right we have. We're here from the government and whatever. So they just entered her home, kept her captive in her room. She's there by this like 15-year-old girls just standing there. She can hear them smashing all of her beautiful belongings, things that she's collected through the years. And she says, I need to use the restroom. So she goes out and she sees these beautiful wine glasses. And this boy is just smashing them one by one. You know, they cost so much money, so much. But they're actually their value is so much greater because they represent a time in China where they had such exquisite craftsmanship. And she saves one of the wine goblets and she says, this is your cultural heritage. You should be proud of it. There will never be another cup like this ever again. And the boy smashed it. Okay? He smashed it and he destroyed it. And that part of China is gone. And what do we get? Stuff. We get dollar store things
Junk.
that
Yeah.
we can give to each other and say, oh, thank you. I'm going to take that to the DI. Okay. And because we are accumulating so many things, but we're buying into it. What
Right.
does China have to offer us? What do they have to offer us? They destroyed everything that was so good and beautiful about what they had that was so special about society, about their history, about their civilization. They destroyed it all in the Cultural Revolution. So
Well,
now
and
what?
Lisa, what you're talking about, what you're talking about is no different than Antifa. Antifa is one step away from being able to walk into your homes. In Illinois, they just said there is no trespassing law.
Oh,
Someone can
wow.
come into your home. And the way that
Yeah,
these kids behave, and they are children. They are children. We're talking the age of like 15 to 22 is the average age of somebody with Antifa. Okay.
mhm.
They're coming into your home. They are taught in school to hate our country. They are taught in school that our traditions, our families are the patriarchy. They're being taught the exact same things as the Cultural Revolution.
Same
And we
playbook.
go, yeah. And
Same
and and,
playbook.
and we sit there going, no, no, it's fine. And it's like it's not fine.
Just a stage.
No, it's not just a stage. It's not just learning about history. It is destroying history. It is destroying property. And while you sit there and say, not you, Lisa, but people, while people sit there and say, "Oh, it's fine. They're just growing. We just need to be accepting." They're not going to walk past your house and go, "Oh, you're one of our allies." When they feel like they have the encouragement, they're going to go to every house,
That's right.
every single house, whether or not you were their ally or not.
That's right. You didn't speak up for the Jews because you weren't a Jew. You didn't speak after so and so because you weren't one of those. But when they came for you, there was nobody there to speak for you.
Absolutely. And that's where we are. We are a country divided. And if adults were doing this, that would be bad enough. But they are taking it into our schools and they are telling our children that this is the narrative to practice. The narrative of critical race theory or critical theories in general, those are the same exact theories that gangs use. Your country is oppressive. People hate you. You will never get ahead. So instead, you should destroy. And that's what the Cultural Revolution was the same. Destroy,
Yes,
destroy, destroy, because people are against you, because there are some people with property. You don't have property, so you're part of the Black. We must destroy anything that has to do with the Black class.
What's interesting too is, as I've thought about all the dollar store things and, it's all about the next phone that might come out and how much those things are worth to you. Well, if you really believe that your freedom, that there is nothing more valuable than your freedom, then you will not be willing to allow much to go on at this point. You will have a real deep sense for what is right, what is good, and what it is that you have to do to stand up for it.
Is there anyone standing up in China?
If they are, you don't see them. You don't see them. Yeah, how do you make your government accountable? That's a question I should ask you. How do you make your government accountable? Well, they're not worried, if you have one person,
Right. Yeah.
Tiananmen Square, how many people were standing there in that famous scene of the two-step dance, one side, one to the other. And there was the tank man, right? He was standing there by himself, millions of people watching him.
Right.
Okay, they're all watching to see what he's going to do, what's going to happen. Why
Right.
didn't people go flood in and stand with him?
They wanted to protect themselves.
Okay, so you just protect yourself and your family. Same thing with the Nazis.
Right.
You see all these people going, on the train and not sure where they're headed. Nobody wants to tell anyone what's going on. But you're just wanting to protect yourself, right? Look at how many people went along. You know how many of those guards actually had an opportunity to get out, to be stationed somewhere else? Do you know how many actually wanted to go? How many chose to say, yeah, please take me. I don't want to be a part of this. Like, it would make you sick to realize how few actually said they would not go along with it.
It, it might have made me sick before. I mean, there used to be a time when I would go, how could someone ever become a Nazi? How could anyone ever align themselves that way? And then we had people who would call on their neighbor if they had too many people over for Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
And
right,
and you just watch that and you go, or you had people who would give you a look like you were on the bottom of their shoe if you didn't comply with mask mandates.
right.
So, so now I'm not nearly as surprised by these kind of things because I'm like, it is very easy to divide people. First, you make them fear. First, you say these people are other, which is a huge problem that we're dealing with today. The
Us and them.
the othering, well, and also just the othering. All of the things that are coming into our schools are about othering our children.
Good.
Queering our children is
Right.
not lesbian and gay. Queering our children is making them reject everything that is other. And those people that cling to the other, well, they're the outside. They're the outsiders. And when you hate them enough, it's okay if they're disposable. And I think that's how, because Nazis, they were friends with each other. I'm sorry, Germans and Jews were friends with each other.
Hmm.
And then you had to be at the point where you were okay with your neighbor disappearing.
Hmm.
And it was just little lies. Oh gosh, they carry diseases.
Yeah,
I mean, really,
exactly.
it was
Exactly.
so simple. And so how in the world, one, why do you think that we don't know all of the atrocities of Mao? Because I'll tell you, in Portland, Oregon, there was a woman running for mayor and
Hmm.
she wore a skirt. She had a skirt printed that said left of Mao. Gosh, this is where I realized public school is not for my family. Um,
Yeah, so why
as
why aren't
well.
we teaching it? We're just ignorant, right? We don't care about history. We don't need to know. We
We
just
only
want
know
to
about
move
Hitler.
on.
We only know about Hitler because it's the right narrative, right? It fits because he's a white man. I
I
mean,
don't- You know what I think? I've thought about this because I tried to get my children to watch The Diary of Anne Frank. Have you seen that?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 times this summer. Said, okay, we're going to watch Diary of Anne Frank. They fell asleep 3 times in a row. Every night I say, okay, we'll watch it again. The fourth time, they watched it the whole way through. And then when they were done, I said, what'd you think? That was so ridiculous. Why did you have us watch that? It's like, you have got to know history. You've got to know. So, okay, so we can say we want our children to know history. We have to value it ourselves, right?
Right.
It's a warning to us. History teaches us lessons. That's what the scriptures are for. That's what else is our own life but a
Right.
lesson to each other?
Right.
Don't make the same mistakes I have made. Please learn from me. Make your life better.
But I don't think it
Because
is. I don't think it is the same. I don't think we want better in when we become communists. I don't think we want better because if somebody strays if somebody strays out of line, then they open up a door that could mean who knows what.
yeah,
So it seems like because I've noticed this in the Black community. A lot of times people don't want better for their kids. It makes them feel like it's kind of like looking at themselves and going, so does that mean I was a coward because I didn't try?
oh, well, obviously with this whole thing with Mao, it's a terrible stain on China, right? Like it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable. Like it makes people feel bad. Okay. And
But you said
with this
people
event,
still stand up for it.
right? So this event that I'm doing, I can't tell you how many friends I've lost, Chinese friends, literally. You would think that they would be like, wow, finally, you're speaking up for us. We always feel like we've been dispensable.
Well, why did they come here then? I don't understand how immigrants will come here and not be appreciative for what they left.
You have to understand though, these are people that in a society, so I'm just talking about uh the Chinese ideas about obedience to authority. Okay, you don't want to be the one, the nail that sticks up will be what? Struck
Deserved.
down.
Yeah.
Those are Chinese sayings. Confucianism was all about obeying the authority. The authority was the emperor. The emperor had what's called the mandate of heaven. The emperor had a responsibility to his people to take care of them, to be benevolent, and to, be, you know, Tianzi, the heaven's son. Well, when the emperor fell from heaven, they lost the heavenly mandate. And, these things happen. But in general, the Chinese are all about obedience. They are great rule followers. You know, why would they not want, an American speaking up for them?
But they came here. That's where my I'm not understanding. They left. They left China. So if they
Right.
left China and they're living under the freedom of America, then I don't understand it because you would think that it would take a huge amount of whatever chutzpah.
Brainwashing.
No, the
Brainwashing.
opposite. It would take something huge to make them run, to make them
Okay,
leave.
but you have to think this way. You got out. I don't want to cause any problems. I don't want to do anything that's going to, harm myself and my family. Look at the history of the Chinese, right? We've got to just get in line. We've got to just, do what we're told to do. Those people over there with the picket signs and doing that, they're causing problems. We need a society of order. So we all need to get in line and be quiet and just go along. Well, if you continue to do that, you will lose everything that we have that is precious and good. America is not great because of what we own, the things that we have in our homes. These things can be smashed, can be gotten rid of. Our founders knew that. They said, I will, give up my life and my fortune and my sacred honor. I will suffer these things for liberty. Are you willing to suffer that? Are you willing to let those things go? And are you willing to stand for liberty? Will you allow yourself to be, put out there in a struggle meeting and people shouting at you and you're humiliated and, because, they will turn the whole thing around. Everything that you were, were doing, this lady, everything that she studied in England. Can you believe it? She was bourgeois. She was a bourgeoisie. She was from the bourgeois class. She did that. Can you believe it? She needs to be put in her place. She thinks she's better than everybody. She speaks English. Look at her home. Big house. What does she need that for? She has 9 rooms. There are 2 people living in that home. She has servants. She has people that work for her. Can you believe that? She's exploiting all these people. She is definitely on our blacklist and she needs to go to solitary confinement. And, she's lucky she's still alive. I mean, that's the way of thinking. But, America is not great because of the things we have. It's because of what we can be, what we can choose, what we can do with our life. If they take that all away, if we can just remain true to the principles of our land, our ideology, the principles of liberty, if we can remain true to that, then it doesn't matter, does it? Does it matter? Does it matter what other, what stuff China can withhold from us? Because China is definitely showing more aggression. China's definitely becoming more tribal. Are we really concerned? We want to hold on to China because, we have students. Did you know we have students in Lehigh at Cascade Elementary? Did you know they wrote a letter to Emperor Xi and he wrote back? Did you know that? He wrote back. They wrote, on this poster, they drew a Chinese communist flag and they drew a panda and they drew, or they wrote, "We love you" in Chinese, and "Go China, go China." Gotta win the coronavirus. Gotta win that. Okay. We're doing that. We love the Chinese people. Yes, we do. I absolutely agree. And Emperor Xi wrote back. We are both big countries here. You know, we all, I do like soccer and I do, and I do love your Chinese characters and you're doing that. That's great. I understand the Americans where we're coming from, right? Like we're showing goodwill. We're, we are being kind and we're doing all these things. Of course. Can we please look behind that facade, Emperor Xi? Are we really coming from the same place? Do we really view each other in the same way? Do we view the individual? Do we view humanity in the same way? Because in your country, we're disposable. We're disposable. Those 65 million victims of Mao said, when they said, what do we do with all those bodies? Almost 40 million people died during the Great Famine in 3 years. There were mothers eating their babies. Okay, people starving to death. They would see a body and they would start eating it, eating tree bark, just trying to stay alive, nothing to eat. How did it happen? How did that happen to the people of China? Okay, Mao made a deal with Stalin. Mao wanted all the military arms that Stalin had. He made a deal. I'll give you the grain that we have, and you give us the military might that you have. They made a deal. The people starved to death. Okay? It doesn't matter. Those people, Mao said, will be fertilizer. What a wonderful thing. If we could just see the life of a person as something we can just throw away, as if they don't matter. Who can see humanity as just, we call it a group of cells. It's not a baby. It's just cells. Do you see if we start seeing people in those ways, where this leads? Do you see the danger in that? Well, China's already there. China's already there. So that's why I want to talk about my event. And I want to hopefully get, people that are listening to come. I would just like to say that, years ago when I first came back from China, I began teaching in the public schools. At that time, there were only 2 schools offering Chinese in the entire state, um, Kaysville Junior High and Park City High School. And I got to teach Chinese, and I got to teach the things I wanted to, like the Red Scarf Girl. And I got to show parts of To Live. It's a movie by Zhang Yimou about the Cultural Revolution. I got to teach the students what I wanted to. People say, why aren't you teaching that now? Well, first off, I can't teach what is not in my curriculum. Okay. So our legislators, they need to put that in our curriculum. People can say, oh, these Chinese programs, they're so bad because, they're not teaching this history. Put it in the curriculum. Put it in the curriculum. It has to be taught, right? There's no way around it. Florida did it. When Florida made Victims of Communism Day a state commemorative day this year, 2022, they also required that in 2023, all Floridian high school students would also receive 45 minutes of instruction on November 7th toward the victims of communism. Well, in 2019, Jay Christopherson, he sponsored the bill HB 116, which made Victims of Communism a commemorative day in Utah. It became that. You didn't know. It's state law. Well, I contacted Jay this summer. I attended the Victims of Communism teacher training. And that's an organization in Washington, D.C. You can look them up. They do a lot of things to educate people about history, what happened. And I called Jay and I said, Jay, this is what I want to do. I want to put together a commemorative evening for the victims of Mao. But if you talk about the history, what happened? The 65 million people that died under Mao, we've not acknowledged them. Okay? We all know about the Holocaust, right? 6 million people died. 65 million people died under Chairman Mao. That's a whole lot of people. Okay? And we don't want to talk about it. We feel uncomfortable talking about it. Why don't we want to talk about it? It's embarrassing. For who? I find that my Chinese friends are saying, I don't like to talk about this. I'm sorry. You don't want to hear me, say that Mao was a monster? I'm sorry that hurts your feelings. You still believe that he was a great leader because that's what you were taught. When you raised your the red book and your ancestors, they shouted for Chairman Mao. It's in your DNA maybe, I don't know. But you don't want me to tell people that he was a monster. You don't want me to show the evidence? It makes you uncomfortable? Well, then don't come because under this document, I have my right to speech. Okay? And so I'm creating this event. This is completely grassroots. I don't belong to an organization. I'm a citizen. Okay? This is what I'm doing for the people that I've read about in these books. Okay? Their stories need to be told. People need to know. We need to read their stories. We need to cry. We need to remember. And we also need to learn. We need to learn from our world's history past, the history of the world. And people say, why are you doing this? The Chinese people, you're not Chinese. Why do you care? Why do you care? You're not Chinese. I say, I know I am not Chinese, but you are my brothers and my sisters. And I love the Chinese people. And I have dedicated over 20 years of my life learning this incredibly hard language. I've done that because it's from love. It's something that I love it. And I'm doing this for those people. So if you're uncomfortable, then don't go. Don't come. Don't think about them on that evening. Just, you're not doing anything different with yourself. You just keep going on with your life. But those of us who want to be there, come, hear the stories, learn about them, pray for them, pray for the people of China. Think about think about everything that they suffered through. I sure hope that, that the spirits of those people that passed away, that died, that they will know that we care.
Let's be clear, it wasn't that they passed away or that they died, it was that they were massacred.
Right. Exactly. Those who were murdered. We know and remember you. We feel your pain when we read about what happened. We don't know everything. A lot of this information has been kept from us. They are in locked places that nobody can read or see. But we, the living, we honor you and we will give you the dignity that you deserve. And if we can't do that as the living, then what are we? We just worry about Facebook. We worry about, the next TV show. Who are we? What do we stand for? What are our principles? What is life more than just, to just go on thinking about what to eat and drink? Then we're nothing more than animals. But if we feel we have a conscience, we consider the dead, we remember the dead, we honor the dead. Well, you know what? If we honor the dead and if we remember the dead, then we are following the teachings of Confucius. Okay? So at this event, you will see stories, you will hear the stories, you will see pictures. You'll see pictures of what happened. You read those pictures and you'll stand with me and you'll say to not only each other, but to anyone that knows and cares, we care. We care. And for everything that Emperor Shi is so proud of, to know that he's got all these little, Utah children learning Chinese, and the propagation of the language of Confucius is alive and well in Utah. He can know that, but he also needs to know that there's a growing group of us that have our First Amendment, and that we have free speech, and we have the ability to speak out. And we're going to exercise that right to do it. And we're going to do it that night. And I'm inviting the children, and I'm doing a free speech First Amendment contest for children in first grade to 12th grade. And doesn't cost them any money. They just need to enter the contest. It's a Sign Up Genius. Okay, I've sent you, the flyers so that you can see them. There's a link there. There's a preliminary contest in Davis County and one that is in Washington County. The finals are the night of the Victims of Mao event. Those students will stand before us and they will tell us, what does the First Amendment mean to them? And they will have read, because in their classrooms, that it draws a blank, and there's a reason. There's a reason it draws a blank. Even adults.
Right.
Even adults, I say, Chairman Mao, who is that a place? Okay. The First Amendment, what is that? Okay. So they have to go and they have to read, they have to look it up and they have to read it. And it says, Congress shall make no laws respecting an establishment of religion and or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Those things should be memorized by our students.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
We need to know the rights because we have to assert our rights. So with this contest, children will come and they will gather and they will give us their speeches. And I anticipate it's going to be an amazing experience. And it has to happen. And it has to happen now. So I really hope that we can have, as many people who can come and support this cause to be there.